And President Biden testing positive for COVID-19 and plans to self-isolate at his Delaware home as the White House says he only has minor symptoms. This, as Biden said in a new interview with BET, that he will only leave the presidential race under a scenario like this.
If there had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. When I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided.
Well, this interview airing the same day that Congressman Adam Schiff became the 21st Democrat calling on President Biden to step aside. Let's bring in former Ohio State Senator and national co-chair of Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign, Nina Turner, and former Republican congressional candidate and News Nation political contributor, Denise Gitsham. Good morning to both of you. Nina, I want to get straight to it. Is President Biden starting to waver on his 2024 run, or is he just kind of stating the obvious on how a medical diagnosis would impact any candidate?
Well, Anna, he's not wavering because he wants to. He's wavering because the donor class has weighed in, which is giving courage to some of the members of Congress to come out and tell the truth about the situation concerning President Biden. Some of him saying that age brings wisdom, and it absolutely does. He should have been wise enough to know not to run again this time. He makes it seem as though he is the only one on the Democratic side of the ledger who's able to bring the party together. And I would argue, as a progressive within the Democratic Party, that he should have done more to groom and get others ready to run and opted not to run this time. So he's being forced out by members of the Hill at this point. So COVID, I'm not saying he doesn't have COVID, but it's kind of convenient.
Well, Denise, watching that interview, he reminded us all that he said back then that he was going to be this transitional candidate. So what do you make of the president's argument that his reason for running again is that he didn't foresee that there was going to be this divided country that was in dire need of his help?
Well, what we're seeing now is that people are not divided on one thing that's unifying them, which is that he really needs to get out. Look, I'm so glad to hear that I'm not the only sort of conspiracy theorist about the timing of this diagnosis seeming pretty suspect, especially since it comes on the heels of a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad couple of weeks for President Biden. You know, if his own party can't stick with him, if he can't unite his own party, how can he be expected to unite any part of America? And I think, you know, Joe Biden was always seen as this thoughtful statesman, somebody who really was wise and actually made a couple of good decisions and was in for a long time, had a lot of experience, but nothing could be less wise than digging in his heels. And, you know, the only reason some of us are looking at this COVID diagnosis as being suspect is because he set himself up for it almost with the BET interview on Tuesday. And when he went to step into Air Force One, none of his staff or aides or he himself even had a mask on. You know, that seems so wild to any casual observer that somebody who takes COVID that seriously wouldn't even wear a mask as he stepped off to go isolate.
If I can get you, Denise, to quickly follow up on that, what do you think? How does this upend Republican strategy potentially if Democrats ultimately bring in a new candidate? We've seen on the stage at the RNC Kamala Harris's name being mentioned, Democrats as a whole, and not just zeroing in on Biden.
Yeah, I think it's hard for any party to gather itself and sort of rearrange, you know, all of its messaging around a new candidate. You know, name ID is everything in an election. And I think that, of course, they're going to find somebody who can be a national figure that steps right in easily. But it's really, really hard to pivot at this point in the race. You know, I think it's really right to say, and just from a objective political standpoint of a strategist, that he really should have done this a lot sooner if he cared about the future of his party more than his own political future.
Interesting. Nina, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's office is not outright denying that new ABC report that dropped yesterday that he told President Biden to end his re-election bid for the good of the country and for the good of the party. Bill O'Reilly making a prediction on News Nation for how the president will respond today. Let's listen.
I can't confirm this, but it's possible, wait a minute, it's possible the Democrats might make the announcement that Biden is, for health reasons, retiring tomorrow to blunt Trump's speech.
Nina, what do you make of that?
Well, and I've heard some of the same rumors from my inside sources that it's only a matter of time. When it comes to people like Leader Pelosi and some of the others, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, and the others, I say that they lack intestinal fortitude. And there is no way on God's green earth that some of these people who are the closest to the president did not see this coming a long time ago. And it's really quite sad and depressing that they would set up the base of the Democratic Party in this way by deceiving them. Now, maybe some of these elected officials did not know that the president was deteriorating to such a manner. And look, we're all going to age. If we live, we're going to age. So this is not ageism here. This is just, can you see the bubble people are asking, can he run? Can he make it through? But the people in the streets are asking, can he serve? Those two things are two different propositions here, but they do converge on one another. So quite frankly, I am upset and angry as a member of the Democratic Party that those in charge, and so, Anna, they get no cookies, they get no brownies, they get no pats on the back for trying to force the president out at this moment, 4 months out from an election, especially if they do believe that democracy is on the line. If former President Donald J. Trump wins, then they didn't believe it as much. They were too inebriated with power to really care at all about what would happen to Big Mama and Big Papas in the hoods all over this country. And so it is quite stunning for the Democratic Party to be in this position. And you know what? Those folks, those leaders, so-called leaders there, they are responsible. The ones that knew, they are responsible because they gambled. It was about them. I do agree with Denise on that. And it was about power.
Well, Nina, we're out of time, but just very, very quickly, are you going so far as to say there's been a cover-up?
Well, somebody knew something. That is what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely. They knew. Somebody knew.
Denise Gitsham, Nina Turner, thanks for that. Appreciate it.